Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to today's biology class. Today, the topic of discussion is the chapter 4, Bioenergetics. Today is the first class of this chapter. The objectives of today's lesson are concept of bioenergetics and its field of discussion. We will provide definition of bioenergetics and what are the contents discussed in it. Role of ATP and other high energy compounds. Among with ATP, there are several other compounds which are called high energy compounds. And what are the role of them inside living cell? We will discuss it. Phosphorylation and dephosphorylation cycle that takes place in ATP. Why is ATP called the biological coin? Definition of photosynthesis. We know this from the early classes like class 5 or 6. And we will examine its chemical reaction. We will discuss about the chemical reaction in detail, and the site of photosynthesis in plants, the mesophyll tissue of leaves, that is the main site of photosynthesis. Oxidation and reduction process in photosynthesis reaction. Here the chemistry comes, the concepts of chemistry like oxidation reduction comes here to explain the reaction of photosynthesis. At first we start from the title Bioenergetics. In Bangla that is called Boni Shakti. That is a branch of biology that discusses about the conversion of chemical energy in living organisms, either in plants or animals. Bioenergetics is actually a branch of biology that belongs to biochemistry. In biochemistry we discuss about how the chemical reactions takes place inside living organism. Within the biochemistry, bioenergetics is a sub branch of it that discusses about the conversion process of energy, like how the plants convert the light energy into chemical energy to make food, or how the animals or even plants use this chemical energy inside food to perform different metabolic activities. That means the syllabus of our chapter is limited to photosynthesis and cellular respiration. In this chapter we will only discuss about photosynthesis process and the cellular respiration process. The role of ATP as energy supplier. At first we will understand what is ATP. The full form of ATP is adenosine triphosphate. That is a kind of chemical that is also called a high energy compound. What are called high energy compounds? High energy compounds are the compounds, several compounds present in living cell that provides metabolic energy to perform different metabolic chemical reactions. Inside a living cell, thousands of different kind of chemical reactions take place. To perform these chemical reactions, we need to provide energy. So this energy will come from the breakdown of these high energy compounds, and ATP is the main kind of high energy compound, and the rest of the high energy compounds are like GTP, NAD, NADH, NADP, NADPH, FAD, FADH2. We see the structure of ATP here. We see this double ring part is called adenine, and along with it there is a 5-carbon sugar, this part attached with it, that is called ribose sugar. So with adenine, ribose sugar attaches with it to produce adenosine, and with adenosine here we see there are 3 phosphate groups attached consecutively. That is why in total that is called adenosine triphosphate. But this adenosine triphosphate can release one phosphate group, then there will 2 phosphate group remaining, then that will be called ADP, that means adenosine diphosphate. So that means if there is only 2 phosphate groups attached with adenosine, that will be called ADP, and if there is only one phosphate group attached with it, then that will be called adenosine monophosphate, AMP. So ATP can release a phosphate group to convert into ADP, then successively again into AMP, and this AMP can attach with the phosphate group to produce ADP, and then again attach with the phosphate group to produce ATP. Then the other high energy compounds are GTP, that is called guanosine triphosphate, structurally much more similar with adenosine triphosphate. NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. NADH, reduced nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. NADP, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. NADP is a slightly different version of NAD, and NADP is found during photosynthesis process. NADP is formed during photosynthesis. And then NADPH. NADPH is called the reduced nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. So here we see when additional H is attached with NADP, that is called reduced. From the concept of reduction from chemistry, we know that if hydrogen attaches with a chemical compound, that is called reduction. So if hydrogen attaches with NADP, that will be called reduction or reduced NADP. That is also true for NADH. NADH is the reduced NAD. Similarly, FAD is called flavin adenine dinucleotide, while FADH2 is called the reduced flavin adenine dinucleotide. So these chemicals are high energy compounds, but not the main high energy compound. The main high energy compound is ATP. Now we will understand the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation cycle of ATP. In a living cell, either in plant or animal cell, there is a chemical found called ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And when chemical energy is found from the food, an animal cell that uses the chemical energy from food by breakdown of food releases the chemical energy, and using this chemical energy it can attach a phosphate group PI, that means inorganic phosphate, with the ADP to form ATP. In case of plants, plant cells in chloroplast, the light energy from the sun can be used to attach the phosphate group with ADP, adenosine diphosphate, to produce an ATP. So in chloroplast, the ATP formation will take place using the light energy, and in cellular respiration process in animal cell or plant cell, the formation of ATP will take place from the breakdown chemical energy of food. So here we see a phosphate group is attached with ADP to form adenosine triphosphate. This process is called phosphorylation. Phosphorylation means the process of adding a phosphate group with ADP. So now this ATP has attained a high amount of energy inside it, because we have invested some energy to produce this ATP, and when this ATP is formed, this ATP contains high much amount of energy that can provide necessary energy for other chemical reactions. For example, this ATP will go to the place of different metabolic reactions. Inside a living cell there are thousands of metabolic reactions taking place. So this produced ATP will go to the site in the site of chemical reaction and will break down to release the phosphate group, and will again convert into the adenosine diphosphate, and it will also release the chemical energy that was stored initially. So this released energy will be used to perform different metabolic activities, and this breaking down of phosphate group and release of energy is called dephosphorylation, because here we are releasing a phosphate group that is called dephosphorylation. So the definition of dephosphorylation is when ATP releases a phosphate group to convert into adenosine diphosphate and also releases a good amount of energy. This process is called dephosphorylation, and this ATP is called the biological coin, বাংলায় বলা হয় জৈব মুদ্রা, or also called rechargeable battery. This ATP is very much analogous with the function of a rechargeable battery. At first, we'll discuss about why that is called biological coin. What is the function of coin? We can go to the market and buy any necessary thing from the market, spending the coin or money. Similarly, this ATP can be spent to perform different chemical reactions. To perform all kind of chemical reactions, we have to provide energy, and this energy will be provided from the breakdown of ATP. So that acts like the money or coin. That is why ATP is called the biological coin. That is also analogous with the rechargeable battery. What is the function of a rechargeable battery? A rechargeable battery stores energy inside it, and it can provide the necessary amount of energy to run the cell phone. So this rechargeable battery can store energy by charging, and later on it can provide energy to serve the mobile or to use internet or to listen music. As a rechargeable battery can charge itself, can store energy, and can release energy in necessary, that ATP performs very much like to this. That is why ATP is often considered analogous with the rechargeable battery. Now we will provide the definition of photosynthesis. বাংলায় বলে সালোক সংশ্লেষণ. What is called photosynthesis? In class 9, the definition of photosynthesis will be much more larger than the previous. Photosynthesis is the process performed in plants inside their chloroplast that uses the light energy to perform a chemical reaction by combining carbon dioxide and water to produce glucose and oxygen. So this photosynthesis process is performed in green plants, and the energy provided for this chemical reaction is obtained from the sunlight, and it uses carbon dioxide and water as raw materials. As end product, it produces glucose, 6 molecules of water, and oxygen gas as a byproduct. We know that for photosynthesis 4 elements are absolutely necessary. The first two are two raw materials, carbon dioxide and water, and the site should be chlorophyll. The reaction site should be chlorophyll, and the energy should be light energy. They are the 4 essential requirements to perform photosynthesis. Where is photosynthesis performed? Photosynthesis takes place inside the chloroplast of mesophyll tissue. That is a cross section of a plant leaf. The plant leaf is surrounded by a cuticle layer. Down of it there is upper epidermis. At the bottom of it there is lower epidermis and also cuticle. At the bottom of upper epidermis there are long elongated cells which are called palisade parenchyma that contains chlorophyll, and bottom of it there are spherical shaped cells called spongy parenchyma. They are also chlorophyll filled cells. So the photosynthesis takes place inside these two kind of mesophyll cells. That means inside palisade parenchyma and spongy parenchyma. In both kind of mesophyll cells, photosynthesis takes place. Here we also see the stomata that allows the exchange of gases, incoming carbon dioxide and outgoing oxygen. And here we see the veins present in leaves. Actually, that is combination of xylem and phloem. The xylem transports the water and other minerals, while the phloem transports the produced food from the leaf. Now we will examine the thylakoid and stroma, the organelle inside the organelle chloroplast. We will travel inside a leaf. we are going into the cell, we are going into the leaf from the lower epidermis through the pore of stomata. That is the pore of stomata. We are entering into the plant leaf. We see numerous number of spongy parenchyma cells, spherical cells, green in color because they are rich in chloroplast. Now we are entering into a spongy parenchyma cell. There is a nucleus and endoplasmic reticulum. There is the cytoplasm we are traveling through. Now we will go into the cellular organelle chloroplast. Inside a chloroplast, we see microscopic structures. These disc-like structures, each of them are called thylakoid, and multiple number of thylakoids make a stack that is called granum. And there are multiple number of granum, collectively they are called grana. So each disc is called thylakoid. Multiple number of thylakoid makes a stack called granum. Multiple number of granum collectively called grana, and the empty space, actually that is not empty, filled with a liquid called stroma. The liquid matrix inside chloroplast is called stroma. The photosynthesis takes place in the thylakoid membrane and also in the stroma. Some chemical reactions of photosynthesis performed in thylakoid, while rest of the chemical reactions are performed in the liquid part stroma. Now we will understand the chemical reaction of photosynthesis. The chemical reaction of photosynthesis is 6 carbon dioxide plus 12 H2O. The light energy comes. The reaction takes place inside chlorophyll. It produces one molecule of glucose, C6H12O6. This glucose contributes to the formation of carbohydrate. The glucose itself is a carbohydrate. Also produces 6 water molecules and 6 oxygen molecules. Here is a matter of fact that when the chemical reaction takes place, the 12 water molecules are broken down initially, they are used up, and when the glucose is formed, it also produces again 6 water molecules. So at first 12 water molecules are broken up, are used up, and later on 6 water molecules are again generated. So when you will provide the chemical reaction of photosynthesis, you must write the total part of the chemical reaction. You should not subtract this 6H2O from the left side. You should not do that. You should write the total chemical reaction, and then that will make sense that 12H2O is initially used up and then 6 water molecules are again generated later on. This process is also called oxidation reduction reaction. Now the concept of chemistry comes, oxidation and reduction. What we know, water molecule here is oxidized to produce oxygen and carbon dioxide is reduced to produce glucose. From the concept of oxidation reduction, we know that if hydrogen is released from a molecule, then this process is called oxidation. If hydrogen is subtracted from a molecule, this chemical reaction is called oxidation. Here we see from water molecule H2O, hydrogen is being subtracted to produce oxygen. So hydrogen is subtracted, this process is called oxidation. And carbon dioxide is reduced to produce glucose. We know that reduction is a process when hydrogen is added to a chemical compound. Here we see carbon dioxide doesn't contain hydrogen initially, but carbon, oxygen, along with it, hydrogen is attached with it to produce glucose. So now this compound contains hydrogen. As hydrogen is attached with carbon dioxide, this process is called reduction. That is why we say water molecule is oxidized and carbon dioxide is reduced. And a matter of fact that aquatic plants have higher rate of photosynthesis than that of terrestrial plants, because terrestrial plants absorb carbon dioxide from the air, and the concentration of carbon dioxide in air is only 0.03%, while the concentration of dissolved carbon dioxide in water is about 0.3%, about 10% more, about 10 times more. That is why aquatic plants have higher amount of supply of carbon dioxide. That is why they can perform higher amount of photosynthesis. So now we will revise today's lesson. What we have learned today: we have learned what is called bioenergetics, the branch of biology that discusses about the conversion of energy in living cell, and its field of discussion is only limited in this class in photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Role of ATP and other high energy compounds. ATP is the main high energy compounds. Along with it, there are several other high energy compounds like FAD, NADH2, etc. We have understood the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation cycle that undergoes in the chemical ATP. The same chemical that absorbs a phosphate to produce ATP by phosphorylation, this same chemical undergoes dephosphorylation, and this same chemical again goes phosphorylation. And this compound cyclically alternates between ATP and ADP by absorbing energy and by releasing energy. Why is ATP called the biological coin? Because it provides the necessary energy to perform any chemical reaction inside living cell, and that is very much analogous with money or coin that allows us to buy any product from the market. Definition of photosynthesis and its chemical reaction: we have understood that 6 carbon dioxide molecules attaches with 12 water molecules to produce 1 glucose molecule plus 6 water molecules plus 6 oxygen molecules. The site of photosynthesis in plants is the mesophyll tissue of leaves. Oxidation and reduction is performed in photosynthesis reaction. In the photosynthesis reaction, oxidation and reduction both takes place simultaneously. Carbon dioxide is reduced and water molecule is oxidized. At the end of today's lesson, you have a homework that explain the phosphorylation dephosphorylation process of ATP with diagram that is provided in your book. No more today. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. সবাই ভালো থেকো ইনশাআল্লাহ। আসসালামু আলাইকুম।